Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. And for a free 15-minute consult, send me an email at catherinecarrigan.com. Now, our guest today is Nancy du Tertre. Nancy is the former host of Hot Leads, Cold Cases, ParaX, and on CBS radios. She is the author of not one, but 5 books, including Psychic Intuition. And she's going to be talking with us today about remote viewing and natural healing. Welcome, Nancy du Tertre.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it.
And you can find out more about Nancy du Tertre and her wonderful work on her website, www.theskepticalpsychic.com. So Nancy du Tertre, can you tell us a little bit about your background before we talk about remote viewing? You have a very interesting life history.
Yes, I have a sort of a checkered past. I've done many different careers, and some related, some not. I have run many businesses. I am an attorney specialized in securities litigation and corporate law. I then did sort of a detour. I'm trained and certified in something called intuitive Gestalt psychotherapy. And my mentor in that particular field was supposed to be writing a book about this new type of psychotherapy that he had developed. And he wasn't. And so I had a couple of dreams about him. And I called him up one day and I said, Ron, I've had these dreams about you. And he said, about what? And I said, well, you're growing mold. And he said, what do you mean mold? And I said, well, I think what that means is you're not working on your book, and you should be sort of the next Fritz Perls. It's brilliant. And why, I'm calling you to let you know whatever way I can help you, I would be happy to. So he said, well, thank you very much. I have to think about that. And then he didn't get back to me. So in the meantime, I thought, well, I've got to, there's so much information about the psychology of intuition. I want to write about it. And then I started exploring what different psychiatrists, psychologists, neuroscientists, any type of medical person had said about it, and they did not want to talk about intuition. So I started exploring anyone who could tell me about intuition, which took me off into these very interesting realms. And then I trained as a psychic detective for about 10 years. I'm also trained in many different types of military-style remote viewing. I'm trained as a spiritual medium, trained with the Spiritualist Church. I am a paranormal investigator. I am a ufologist. My specialty is alien languages. So you could say I sort of went off on a bunch of very interesting, but ultimately very related tangents.
That's wonderful. So again, one of your 5 books is Psychic Intuition, and one of my 8 books is called Unlimited Intuition Now.
Oh, there you go.
So I've talked to a lot of people on this show about intuition and about how that relates to our health. So for example, in my work as a medical intuitive, I see that there's 4 primary kinds of intuition. So for example, if you're high in clairsentience, the feeler people get a lot of digestive problems, especially when they are not able to differentiate between what's their feelings, what's their energy, emotions with other people. And the people who are high in claircognizance, they can actually have a lot of mental health issues and be completely disconnected from their bodies. So there's a lot of relationship between how your psychic gifts work and what's going on with your health. Now, let's go back to you. And so remote viewing, why do you call yourself the skeptical psychic?
Well, first of all, I use the term skeptical in a really positive way, not as a sort of religious zealot term. There are a lot of, I would say, particularly scientists, academics, people who are totally left brain thinkers who cannot imagine anything other than what comes to them through their own thinking process. And so they dismiss everything automatically, and they consider themselves to be skeptics. I'm not that kind of skeptic. What I am is somebody who constantly challenges anything that I have trouble understanding initially or can't be explained. So I test everything. I think I'm more skeptical of myself than probably, I am of anybody else. So it was a long process. I went through years and years of, in my various types of psychic training. Eventually my teachers and my students started to laugh at me because I would dismiss everything. And they'd say, "Oh, really? So you got that right again? Doesn't that strike you as a little unusual?" and eventually I sort of realized that I would be stupid not to acknowledge it. Yeah. So I test, but, I believe.
One of the things that I find as a medical intuitive is that some of the people who have the hardest time with what I refer to as their soul guidance are people who are left brain dominant. So if you're left brain dominant, you're linear, you're logical, you think sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. So they're left brain dominant, and they're high in psychic feeling. Because what I find is that they receive information through energy and literally feelings. They feel the energy of what's going on, but their left brain wants to analyze it or make sense of it. And they have these huge internal conflicts until they learn to honor both the rational side and their soul gifts. So it's they're two separate skills, as it will, right?
I think there are two different ways of thinking and also of feeling. And by the way, my father was a medical scientist. So I grew up as a little girl, I wouldn't go to visit Daddy's office. I'd go to visit Daddy's laboratory. And I would watch him do, for example, operations on rats, sheep, monkeys, dogs, giant frogs, whatever. But he didn't have that kind of emotional intuition that you're talking about to be translated into a logical intuition. He just didn't have that at all. So I think that, I think there are many very, very intuitive people in the healthcare fields who just have to channel it a different way. But I would say, but not all of them. I sort of come from a background of not all of them.
Yeah. Well, I grew up hanging out with my grandfather, who was a scientist.
Oh.
He was a research chemist for DuPont. And I grew up doing scientific experiments with my grandfather, on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Now, we're going to be talking today about remote viewing. Mm-hmm. What exactly is remote viewing, Nancy du Tertre?
Well, okay, so remote viewing is a term that was developed out of the Stanford Research Institute in 1973 by two laser physicists, both very well known, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, and also an artist from New York who was very psychic. His name was Ingo Swann. And Ingo was my mentor. I knew him for about 10 years before he passed. And what the entire purpose, and it was a program that was funded by the CIA. It was to try and develop something, the equivalent of what they called psychic spying at the time. So it was an intelligence gathering mechanism. And they were really trying to show that it could be, that psychic ability was real and that it could be trained. So they were trying to take people, who were not maybe psychic or didn't believe they were psychic from the military, train them, and then show that they could develop accurate information psychically using nothing more than a pair of numeric coordinates. Okay, so that's how it started. Then it sort of branched off. There's several different types of remote viewing. So you have what originally was called controlled remote viewing, CRV. You've got now associative remote viewing, ARV, which is sort of a binary choice type of viewing. You know, sort of is the stock market going to go up or down? Is the baseball team going to win or lose? That kind of thing. It's very simple. You have extended remote viewing, which is a much more relaxed sort of, it's a more relaxed type of a system, but all of these systems have what they call protocols or rules. So the way that I like to explain remote viewing is it's clairvoyance with protocols. So you don't just sort of shoot your mouth off and say whatever it is that comes to you. There are particular pathways, and it's all documented.
Right.
So that's the nutshell version.
Yes. Now, you mentioned the different kinds of remote viewing. Can you give our audience sort of an overview of each kind of remote viewing and the kind of situations that each kind of remote viewing would be used in?
Yeah, so your typical controlled remote viewing, CRV, that's sort of the main one. That was the original one, the main one. Originally, actually, they thought that you needed the exact geographic coordinates of a location if you wanted the viewer to view whatever was at that location. Then they discovered you actually didn't need the geographic coordinates, and in fact, it might mess with the psychic ability of the person if they were a little prejudiced, if they might already know where some of those coordinates were. So they started using random numbers. And so, for example, let's say your target is a military installation in, let's say, Russia. And let's say your client, which might be an intelligence agency, wants to know if something is being built there or there's something going on that they need to know about. So you would give a number or a pair of numbers to that target location. You would give the pair of numbers to the remote viewer. The remote viewer would be sitting in a room with a piece of paper and a pencil. That's it. That's all you get. And they would normally, in the military setting at least, they would have a monitor who would sort of prompt them, you know, what's the next step? What's on the protocols? What do you do next? But the first thing you do is something called an ideogram, which is sort of a squiggle. And then it allows you to kind of tune into your ideomotor movements on it. And then you divide it up into gestalts, and then you start dividing that up into vocabulary words. You're trying to avoid thinking about it. And sometimes you sketch, and depending on what level you're at, because they're all different phases and levels, you may be doing clay modeling. You may be dividing it up into more subdivisions of types of data. You know, is it descriptive? Is it emotional? Is it, you know, you divide it up into that. So it's very, you know, almost ABCD-ish. So that's CRV. It's very, very strict. You have ARV, which also uses a pair of numbers. But what they do...
And ARV is...
Oh, sorry, associative remote viewing. And for that, what you would be doing is... there's already, you have either a choice, up or down, win, lose, you know, black or red, whatever your choice is. And a photo is generally, it's randomly chosen to represent each answer, yes or no, okay? You don't see any of that. You don't know what those photographs are that represent the answers. What you get is a pair of numbers. And you try to remote view the winning photograph representing the winning outcome. Okay, so you're looking into the future and you describe whatever you think is the photo. And then you finally get to see the two photos and you decide which one you have best described. And that's your answer about what's going to happen in the future. Is the stock market going to go up or down? You picked the photo that had the, I don't know, the bright orange balloons in it. Okay, that means up. You know, that's because you described that one. So that would be ARV. And then you have ERV, which is more meditational, relaxed. You lie down, you go on your travels based on your pair of numbers. You come back and you report them all. So and then there are various offshoots since then. People have developed different schools, but my sense is that almost all of them kind of work off the same concept of controlled remote viewing, CRV. They might change some terms, they switch around some stuff, but they're not that different.
Now, how did you first get interested in remote viewing?
Good question. I don't know. I think it was, no, it's because I met Ingo. That's why. Because I was trying to explore intuition. And then I discovered, actually there was I take it back. There was, well, no, maybe this was afterwards. I met a psychic down in the Virginia Beach area of Edgar Cayce's ARE, his institute down there. And she was affiliated with the institute. And I think I asked her about remote viewing. And she said that remote viewing will bring psychic ability into the mainstream because it's male dominated. And it's got that sort of military thing going on with it. So she said that's what's going to allow people to explore, people with the left brain logical thing going on, they will be able to explore it and not feel like idiots.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Now, for our audience, I just want to sort of share for our audience sort of my terminology about the 4 different kinds of psychic gifts. And of course, there's others, but here's the 4 primary ones. So what we're talking about with remote viewing uses clairvoyance, which is psychic vision. And if you think about psychic vision, just like you have eyes and ears and a nose and hands, different areas of our bodies, are used for different senses. So you are using your third eye between the eyebrows for psychic vision. Another kind of psychic gift is clairaudience, which is psychic hearing. So the center of the psychic hearing is above the ears and also your throat chakra. Then there's clairsentience, which is psychic feeling, and the center for psychic feeling is actually your solar plexus area, sort of in the center of your chest. And finally, there's claircognizance, which is psychic knowing, and the center for that reception is above the crown of your head. And as I'm sure Nancy Tertre would agree, people who are very high in intuition, such as Nancy and myself, are actually using all of these gifts. Wouldn't you say, Nancy?
No doubt, and more. And actually, I write a lot about that in my book, Psychic Intuition. And I would just correct you on one small thing, and that is with remote viewing, you're actually using all of those senses. All of those psychic senses are coming in. So you may, let's say, hear something in your sort of mental ear. You might hear a name or something sort of unusual, some maybe consonants or letters. And those may be helpful in determining whatever it is that your target is. So you're actually using everything.
Absolutely. And okay, so now let's talk about the relationship between remote viewing and natural healing. So what do you feel is the relationship between remote viewing and natural healing?
I don't know that I have ever seen remote viewing by itself. And by the way, a lot of people said it really shouldn't be called remote viewing. It should be called remote perception. It's just, that's how it started out. And I think that's why the whole, clairvoyance emphasis started. In terms of healing, I mean, I'm also a medical intuitive, but I'm just a natural. I'm not trained on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or and so maybe I don't know all the technical terms in that particular field, but remote viewing for me is always an intelligence gathering method. So for me, if I'm trying to tune into somebody's health situation, I am doing a form of remote viewing. So I'm sort of running through their different body systems, seeing what sticks out to me, seeing if they're different textures, different colors, different issues. And if I'm sensing, sometimes, I can sense or I can hear possible solutions for them, which I know you have to be really, really careful about offering, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, they've turned out to be extremely useful. So you can do that remotely. The other piece of that, I guess, is the healing angle, which is more of what I would call remote healing as opposed to remote viewing. And that's a working of transferring or working with energy across a long distance.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say that, as you would agree, all these are just terms, whether we call it remote viewing or remote perception, but it's the same thing. And I know that when I'm doing medical intuitive readings, I get people give me information a lot of different ways. Sometimes I'm speaking to the person on the phone, on the Skype or Zoom video conference. Sometimes I'm simply given a photograph. And I work with a healing center in Costa Rica, and they send me a report on a person. So it's Joe Blow, lives in Seattle, 54 years old, has Parkinson's disease, eats peanut butter and jelly for lunch. And this is what he thinks his problem is. And then I'll sit there, and a lot of times I just get the report, Joe Blow lives in Seattle with Parkinson's disease, and then I focus on that person. Right? But I'm using my vision, I'm seeing their body, I'm seeing their organs, I'm seeing their organ systems, and then I'm reading the physical, the energetic, the emotional, mental, and spiritual. And then I also do distant healing with people all over the world.
Yeah.
So I have sort of a system that I've developed, but it absolutely involves remote viewing, because a lot of times I'll see, and the way I think of this is that I feel that all our psychic gifts are in fact soul gifts, and it's soul guidance. And, my angels are helping me, my soul is helping me, my higher self is helping me, but also the person that I'm working with, their soul, their angels, their body, it's all talking to me, right?
Yep, totally agree.
And so when you're doing a medical intuitive reading, Nancy Du Tertre, what's your system such as it is? How do you go about it?
Okay, so usually, and the reason why I don't really call it remote viewing at that point unless I'm following the protocols. Because remote viewing is remote viewing because of its protocols. Otherwise, it's a form of clairvoyance. So it really depends, what I'm doing. I have developed a system of protocols that I use, and I call it TSP.
Which stands for, TSP stands for?
TSP stands, it's a very, it's a funny acronym. It's Tested ESP, so it's TESP. Okay. So that's what it stands for. And I have set up, it's taken me 10 years or so, but I have worked out a set of protocols for it. And I do follow it now on all of my readings. So I would say, yeah, if I have somebody who contacts me and they have a health-related issue, I'm using my TSP remote viewing system. Otherwise, I would, before that, I didn't particularly have a system. I was running through, whatever I was tuning into or questions that I would ask myself about whatever that person's situation was. Sometimes I would sketch. There were just a whole lot of different ways of doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's actually easier, at least for me, to have a system, and then it actually helps the other person so that they begin to see themselves as they are. So, for example, you, in my opinion, such as it is, you are a soul who has a body. And when you have illness or disease, it begins in the energy field and begins in the spiritual, mental, emotional, or energetic system and comes into the physical body. And when you want to heal, it's got to go out through the physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So I'm reading those 5 layers as it is. And using my vision, my psychic hearing, my psychic knowing, my psychic sensing and feeling, all of those things. And so is there a particular psychic gift that you use more than like I'm a claircognizant, which is just psychic knowing, the same as Edgar Cayce. Is there a gift that you use more than another?
I think that I am more clairvoyant, although, I'm clairaudient, I would say, would be the next one. After that, claircognizant, I would say. Clairsentient, I have developed, but that is the one that's taken me the longest, I would say. Because I'm fundamentally, I come from a background of thinkers and left brain people. I'm not a touchy-feely by nature. so feeling stuff. I was always amazed. I taught psychic development and mediumship in New York and New Jersey for a long time. And I remember there was it was a great class. It was a big class. And I had people who, for example, I had a guy in there who had been a medium, I think, for 40 years. And he was exploring more. I had another guy who was a professional, and very, flamboyant about his skills. And then I had brand new beginners and people at all stages in between. But there was one point in one particular class where the guy had been a medium forever, and the other guy who has been doing this professionally forever, the two of them said, "Oh my God, I have a horrible headache. Is that you?" And then they would point to the person next to them, and then the other guy said, "No, it's somebody here, over here." Anyway, it turned out that they were both right, that there were both women sitting next to them who had different, headaches or whatever it was going on. But they had to flush it out and because they couldn't stop from picking it up.
Yes. And you're bringing up a problem that many highly intuitive, highly psychic people have, which is uncontrolled empathy.
Yes.
So empathetic, and so it's called being an empath. So let's take a moment to talk about the problems of being an empath and how you can still maintain your psychic gifts. Because I've had people email me and they say, "Can you teach me how to turn this off?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll teach you how to manage it better." And they're like, no, I want you to turn it off. So right. What do you see the problems of being an empath?
And I think you just explained that really well. And I had people saying, turn it off, turn it on, or anything in between. So what I used to explain to them, I said, look, think of this like you're on a dimmer switch, okay? So you can bring it up a few shades, you can bring it down, there are probably ways that you can either go full force, on or off 100%, but it really is easier to look at it like a dimmer switch where you could, either way. And I think it is difficult for people to switch their focus, but that's what you have to show them how to switch their focus as to the data that they're pulling in. And then you have to, you have to give them a substitute, I think, for something else that allows them to experience the world without being completely bombarded with energy from other people or entities or whatever. And I think a lot of that is a process of learning your own boundaries and learning to feel, oh, this feels like me versus that feels like them, which is sometimes really, really, really difficult.
Yes. One piece of homework that I give my highly empathic clients, empathic clients, is 3 times a day, I want you to get off by yourself and ask yourself, how do I feel? So first thing in the morning, you wake up, you open your eyes, you tune in. How do I feel? Notice your physical body, notice your emotional process. And then first thing in the morning, about 3 o'clock, and then again right before you go to bed. And then if during the day you have a sudden shift from something other than that home base, then you know it's not you. And simply by knowing it's not you, that can sometimes get rid of about 50% of it, right? Right? So, you know, and another thing that I encourage people to do is to learn how to clear your energy. And there's a lot of different ways to clear your energy. A very simple way is to rub your hands together, gather some energy, gather some chi, pass them over your head 3 times, and set your intention that you clear your energy, so that you know that if there's been a sudden shift off of that home base, it's not you. And then there's a lot of different ways that you can protect your energy. And I tell everybody, in my view, it's all one energy, it's all one, it's all one, it's all good. But within that oneness, there's different vibrations. That's why we have salt and why we have pepper. Right? And there's a difference between salt and pepper, and you know it when you taste it. So another simple thing to do is to cocoon, which is you visualize the white light of protection around you, and then around that you visualize the blue light of healing, which is an aquamarine color, a light blue, and then around that you visualize the golden light of transformation. And then there's lots and lots of other things. But I know that one of the things that I do after I'm finished doing a medical intuitive reading is I drop the file. Like I'll get an email from somebody and then I don't even remember that I've talked to them before. And I do that very consciously so that I'm not continuing to process the energy around them. Does that make sense?
Very much so. In fact, there's something when you work in the psychic detective field, you have to be very, very careful of the energies that you're picking up, because most of the cases that I worked on, have been mostly homicides. And sometimes you work with really, really awful ones, and you're seeing photographs, so that those are getting burned into your brain, and you're experiencing being there. Sometimes you sort of do this awful sort of mind meld with, instead of, well, either the victim or sometimes the suspect, or the perpetrator, I mean. So you have to work very, very diligently to make sure that you're not picking up or retaining any of that very negative energy, which is why a lot of psychics won't even go into that field. They prefer to go into a healing field where, at least the energy you're picking up is going to be more of a, say, a disease or an energy type of negative, rather than a evil intent negative.
Yeah. And for our audience, what Nancy Tertre is talking about is a real thing. That's part of why you don't want to play around with this. And I knew that years ago, I remember going to the best naturopath in Atlanta, and I walked in there all smug, and I thought, he's going to tell me that I'm the healthiest person he's seen all month. He diagnosed me with hepatitis. I was completely shocked. I was like, wait, I don't have tattoos. I haven't had IV drugs. It's like, what's going on here? And I talked to a Qigong master, and he said, you've been processing your client's energy through your kidneys and through your liver and then your kidneys. And
right.
So, if you do this kind of work, you have to you have to train yourself into how to manage the energy. because energy is a real thing. Everything is vibration. And when we're tuning in, again, whether you're looking at it, you're listening to it, you're feeling it, or you're just knowing about it, you're processing that energy to some degree. It's like your soul, if I was going to use a metaphor, it's like your soul is touching that and is making contact with that. And so you want to have methods, if this is what you're doing, so that you drop the energy, you clear the energy, and you go back to your own base, because it can affect you.
Totally. I totally agree with you. And also, I think it's interesting. I've noticed with me anyway, I have zero memory for names and faces, which means I would make a terrible salesperson and not very good politician, because I can't remember people. But what happens is, I mean, there's a negative and a positive to that. And the positive is you don't pick up energies, you don't retain them when you meet somebody for the second, third, fourth, fifth time. You're just as happy to do it again. When I do private readings, I mostly, I don't go into any type of a deep trance, but I am in a very light trance state. I don't remember generally speaking, what I say in my readings, and I don't remember my clients, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So, but it helps with kind of, the negative energies in general tend to slip off me pretty easily.
Yeah. And I take notes, which I email the person when we're done, and it's like they have it. And right. I have to remember it, and they'll send me an email. Like I just got a text this morning from a gentleman. He said, "What are the 2 types of parasites that you said that I have?"
Right.
And my response is, look at your notes. It's in your notes, because I literally won't remember.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
I think that's probably healthy.
Yeah, so it's just really important. So I know for myself, after I do medical intuitive readings, I'll do something to change the channel. I'll walk my dog, right? Being in nature, gardening. If I realize that I picked up energy, I'll clear my energy. Like I said, passing my hands. A really good healer's trick is to take an Epsom salt bath. You take a bath with 1 cup Epsom salts and 1 cup baking soda. So if you're listening to this broadcast and you know that you're an empath and you know that you pick up energy right, left, and center all day long, then take Epsom salt baths with 1 cup Epsom salt, 1 cup baking soda, sit in the bath at least for 20 minutes and clear your energy. Another thing you could do when you take a shower is set your intention to clear your energy, and just visualize the water clearing your energy field, and then see the colors of your chakras in there. Because again, if you keep picking up other people's energy and processing other people's energy, that's going to have major detrimental effects on your health. So Nancy du Tertre, what do you see when you're reading other people who are highly empathic? What kind of health problems do you see them typically having?
I don't think that I see anything typically. I know that I have sort of reacted to different ways to different people's health issues. I mean, one example that just comes to me sort of off the top of my head is I had a client who said that she was experiencing some, I think she said pain. And I don't know if she said her leg. She might have said her leg. She might not have told me where it was. And as I was working up my written TSP, what I call an advanced reading, it's where I'm just tuning into and writing it all down. And before I could do, and I was picking up the phone to call her, I got an excruciating twang of a nerve pain in, I forget which foot, but, and it was on the sole of the foot. And I don't get nerve pain in my feet. And it was peculiar, and I pay attention to synchronicities, it was peculiar, the fact that it was at the exact moment that I was calling her. So I incorporated that into my reading. And I said, are you experiencing, nerve pain in your left foot or whatever it was, on the sole of the foot? And yes, 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 yes. So, I mean, that's one way. That's a very physical way. But other people, I mean, I don't think I have a system for medical intuitive work the same way you do. Mine is just much more of a tuning into the person. I got told by somebody, well, I've been told by several people, actually. I have found the medical issues that were later verified by their physicians that no physician could identify prior to that. I had one client who said he'd been to doctors in 10 countries trying to find a solution. And whatever it was, and I've forgotten what it was now, that I told him, it turned out to be the correct analysis. So.
Now, going back to what we're talking about, again, highly empathic people can have any number of health problems. So, for example, you may have depression, which is caused by you literally processing somebody else's energy and emotions. You may have anxiety, also caused by processing other people's energy and emotions. I talked last week with a lady in Canada who had a severe form of neuropathy. And what had happened to her was some time previous, her daughter, to whom she was very close, had a car wreck and then an abortion. And my client was literally processing the energy of those traumas and tragedies. So if you are an empath, you can, and you are not learning how to clear your energy and letting go of this energy, it can have a big effect on your physical well-being as well as your mental emotional well-being. So again, depression, anxiety, many forms of mental illness, lots of pain. A lot of times people, the pain that you have, the pain that you suffer is energy that you've picked up from people around you that you're not able to let go of. And so, again, if you are highly empathic and you realize that you are naturally intuitive, you want to learn how to manage this so that it doesn't affect your physical and mental emotional well-being. So Nancy Tertre, you gave the example of, feeling the other lady's foot pain in your own body. Have there been any health issues that you've had as a result of all your work with remote viewing?
I wondered for a long time because I was having issues putting on weight. Now, I had my kids, my son I had him when I was 44. With each kid, I put on 70 pounds. Now, okay, and you get a little older, your metabolism slows down, you don't exercise as much, even if you do, it doesn't do as much, so there are all kinds of, and I thought, okay, fine, plus the hormonal issues. However, over a period of time, I was putting on more and more weight, and I was eating less food than almost everybody I knew. And I eat really good food. I'm very, very careful. I know what to eat. I know how to eat, all that kind of stuff. I had, at one point, a personal trainer who had all of his people, his nutrition people, trying to figure out what was going on. I went to doctors. I went to nutritionists at hospitals. Everybody you could think of. Nobody could figure out what was going on. And what I eventually learned was that I have a form of diabetes. It's pre-diabetes. And it's the type of diabetes where your body does not metabolize the sugar, no matter how much insulin you're dumping into your system. So I just keep dumping insulin in. But I had wondered for many, many years if somehow I was this weight issue, because a lot of psychics and mediums are heavy. And I thought, well, am I accumulating some type of a negative energy that I'm packing onto my body somehow?
Yeah. And I've definitely observed that as well. I think it's very important that if you do intuitive work and you are empathic, that you learn how to ground your energy. And there's a lot of things that help you ground: being in nature, walking outside, grounding, gardening, walking barefoot, and learning again how to clear your energy. So like Nancy Tertre and I are talking about, like learning how and practicing not taking on other people's energy or emotions. And part of that is blessing everyone on their path, realizing that it's all good, that each person has chosen their soul path for whatever reason. And we can be compassionate, but we don't have to take it on, and we don't have to process that. So Nancy Tertre, author of Psychic Intuition at theskepticalpsychic.com. Any final thoughts for our audience?
I just think that they should listen to your interesting tips and observations about, how to improve their health, because I agree with everything that you've said. And I think that what you said is, it's very practical. It's stuff that everybody can do. And it's a way of protecting your body, which is your temple in this 3D reality. So I think it's great that you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Nancy Tertre. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. And for a free 15-minute consult, send me an email at catherine@catherinecarrigan.com. And remember, when you ground yourself into your energy and know your own home base, then you can use your soul gifts in a grounded and practical way. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.